My parents sold their house and gave $350,000 to my brother, then tried to invade my home like they owned it, until what I did next left them reeling. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next. I'm Marcus, 35 years old, and I've been married to my wife Sarah for 4 years. She's a software engineer, brilliant with code, and makes solid money. I run a landscaping business that I built from absolutely nothing. I own 3 properties. The one we live in is modest but comfortable. The second house I bought 2 years ago is an investment property. And I rent it out to this couple, Tom and Lisa. They pay on time, keep the place spotless, perfect tenants basically. The third property is a small commercial building I just purchased for my expanding business. Now here's where my family comes in. My parents had 2 kids. Me and my younger brother Ryan, who's 32. And I swear this guy has never held a real job for more than 6 months in his adult life. Since graduating college, which my parents paid for obviously, he's been jumping between these ridiculous business ventures that always end up costing my parents money. Meanwhile, when I wanted to start my landscaping business, did I get family money? Hell no. My dad actually told me it was too risky, and I should stick with my construction job. But when Ryan announced he was an entrepreneur, suddenly it was all about supporting his vision and believing in his potential. Fast forward to now, Ryan is engaged to this woman Melissa, who has expensive taste and zero understanding of where money comes from. This girl is always wearing designer clothes, always traveling somewhere, always talking about their luxury lifestyle. On what income? You ask, great question. Ryan is currently between ventures again, which means he's living off my parents while he explores new opportunities. Melissa doesn't work either because she's focusing on wedding planning and building her brand. Her brand being posting selfies and makeup tutorials to her 847 Instagram followers. Here's where things went sideways. 3 months ago, my parents called me all excited. They decided to sell the family house, the place they'd owned for 25 years. Bought when my dad first got his supervisor job at the electric company. Nice place. Good neighborhood. Probably worth around $450,000 in today's market. I figured they were ready to downsize. Maybe move to one of those active adult communities now that they're in their mid-60s. Made sense to me. So I'm on the phone with my mom, and she's going on about how they got such a good price and how excited they are about this new chapter. I'm happy for them. They worked hard their whole lives. They deserve to enjoy retirement. Then she drops it on me. We loaned most of the money to Ryan for his wedding gift. I'm sitting there thinking I must have misheard her. You loaned him what now? $350,000. He found this beautiful downtown condo, and we wanted to help him start his new life with Melissa. I'm doing math in my head. If Ryan got $350,000, and the house sold for $450,000, that left my parents with $100,000 for their own housing. That might cover a down payment on a small retirement condo, but barely. What about your retirement? I asked my mom. Oh, we have it all figured out, she said cheerfully. We're moving into your rental house. Just like that? Not would you consider, or could we talk about, or even do you think that might be possible? No, just a straight up announcement that they were taking over my investment property. I asked if they'd discussed this with my tenants. Apparently that wasn't necessary, because I could just tell Tom and Lisa to leave. You know, break a legal lease and screw over 2 people who'd never done anything wrong because my parents needed somewhere to live after giving away their house money. The entitlement was breathtaking. They'd made this massive financial decision without consulting anyone, given away most of their security to fund my brother's luxury lifestyle, and then just assumed I'd solve their housing problem by destroying my rental income. When I told them that wasn't happening, my dad's voice got real cold real fast. We raised you, Marcus. This is what family does for each other, right? Family. The same family that paid for Ryan's college, but not mine. The same family that funded his failed businesses while telling me to be more realistic about my goals. The same family that just handed him $350,000 while expecting me to provide free housing. I told them I'd call them back, and hung up the phone. Sarah was standing in the kitchen doorway. She'd heard enough of the conversation to know what was happening. Please tell me you're not actually considering this, she said. Not for a second, I replied. But I knew this was just the beginning. My parents don't take no for an answer, especially when they think they're entitled to something. I had no idea how ugly this was about to get. I'm at the shop last Thursday when my phone starts blowing up. Tom was calling. I almost don't answer because I'm trying to focus on a landscape design, but something made me pick up. Marcus, we need help. There are people at our front door claiming they own this house. My stomach drops immediately. What do you mean claiming they own it? They have suitcases, and they're banging on the door telling us we need to pack up and leave. The woman is screaming that this is their house now, and we're trespassing. I already knew who it was. But I asked anyway, did they give you names? They said they're your parents. Of course they did. I told Tom not to open the door under any circumstances, and that I was on my way, dropped everything, didn't even lock up the shop properly, just grabbed my keys and rushed across town. The drive over was surreal. I kept thinking maybe there was some misunderstanding, but deep down I knew exactly what was happening. My parents had decided that since I wouldn't voluntarily hand over my rental property, they'd just take it. I pull up to the house, and sure enough, there's my mom and dad on the front porch with 2 big suitcases and several shopping bags. My mom is pounding on the door with her fist, while my dad stands there looking all authoritative like he's the landlord showing up to evict someone. This is ridiculous. My mom is yelling, "We know you're in there. Open this door right now." I can see Tom and Lisa's curtains twitching. They're probably scared out of their minds, but they're smart enough not to answer. My parents see me coming, and my mom immediately switches from angry to relieved. "Marcus, thank goodness you're here. These people won't leave." "Mom, what are you doing? We're moving in. We told you we needed somewhere to live, and I told you that wasn't happening." My dad steps forward with that stern expression he used to give me when I was a kid. "Son, we've been staying at the extended stay for 2 weeks waiting for you to handle this situation. 2 weeks in a hotel instead of, I don't know, looking for an apartment, or calling a realtor, or doing literally anything responsible adults do when they need housing. You've been staying at a hotel because you chose to sell your house and loan the money away," I said. "That's not my problem to solve. We're your parents, and they are my tenants with a legal lease." That's when my mom completely lost it, started screaming about how ungrateful I was, how they sacrificed everything for their children, how a good son would take care of his parents. The whole neighborhood could hear her. My dad tried a different approach. "Look, we already gave our notice at the hotel. Our checkout is today. We have nowhere else to go." Notice how that was supposed to be my emergency. They'd painted themselves into a corner and expected me to solve it by screwing over 2 innocent people. Tom cracked the door open just enough to stick his head out. "Is everything okay? Should we call someone?" "Everything's fine," I told him. "My parents are leaving. We are not leaving." My mom shrieked, "This is family property." That's when I lost my patience. "This is my property. I bought it with my money from my business that I built with zero help from either of you." My dad started in with the guilt trip. "After everything we did for you, what exactly did you do for me, Dad? Because I'm having trouble remembering all this help you're talking about." He got flustered, started stammering about raising me and providing for me. I cut him off. "You provided the legal minimum required to not get arrested for child neglect. Meanwhile, you're currently funding Ryan's downtown lifestyle while demanding I give you free housing." My mom was crying now, doing that thing where she makes herself the victim. "Where are we supposed to go? Literally anywhere that isn't my rental property." The whole thing was insane. They'd created this problem themselves, ignored every reasonable solution, and were now trying to force me to fix it by destroying my business relationship with good tenants. Tom spoke up again. "Should I call the police?" My parents both whipped around to stare at him like he's suggested calling in an airstrike. "You wouldn't dare involve the police in a family matter." My dad said. "He absolutely would," I replied. "And so would I." "You're trespassing." That's when it got really ugly. My mom started screaming about how I was choosing strangers over family, how she was ashamed to have raised such a selfish son, how my dead grandfather would be rolling in his grave. My dad went for the throat. "Your brother would never treat us like this." "You're right. My brother would take your money and let you live in your car." "At least I'm being honest about saying no." I turned to Tom. "If they're not off this property in 5 minutes, call 911. This isn't over." My dad said as he grabbed one of the suitcases. They loaded their stuff back into their car. My mom crying the whole time about what a horrible son I was. The last thing I heard before they drove off was my dad yelling that I'd regret this after they left. I apologized to Tom and Lisa for the drama. Turns out they'd been hiding in their bedroom for 30 minutes before I showed up. Genuinely scared these crazy people were going to break down the door. I gave them my direct cell number and told them to call me immediately if my parents showed up again. Also told them I'd understand if they wanted to break their lease early after this harassment. But I knew my parents weren't done. People who think they're entitled to your property don't just give up because you said no once, they escalate. The next day, my phone started ringing constantly. Different numbers, different relatives, all with the same basic message: "I'm a terrible son who's abandoning his parents." First call was from my Aunt Linda at 7 a.m. I'm barely awake, coffee hasn't even finished brewing. And she is laying into me about family values and respect for elders. Apparently my parents had called her crying about how their ungrateful son left them homeless. "Marcus, how could you do this to them? They're your parents." I tried explaining the situation, but she cut me off. "I don't want to hear excuses. Figure out a way to help them. Then she hung up on me. An hour later, my cousin Jake called. Haven't talked to this guy in probably 2 years, but suddenly he's very concerned about my character. Same script. How could I abandon family? What kind of person chooses money over parents? They raised you, man, you of them. They raised my brother too, and he's the one with their money. I said. That's different. How is it different? Click, another hang up. This pattern continued all day. By noon I'd gotten 12 phone calls and probably 20 text messages. The texts were the worst part. Long guilt trips about family loyalty, how my parents sacrificed everything for their kids, how I'm breaking their hearts. Here's what really got me: not one of these people asked for my side of the story. They all just accepted my parents' version of events and decided I was the villain. My cousin Beth sent me this long Facebook message about how my parents were living like refugees in a hotel, and how could I sleep at night knowing they were suffering, living like refugees, because they chose to sell their house and loan the money away. But here's the thing that really pissed me off: not one of these righteous family members offered to help my parents themselves. They all had very strong opinions about what I should do, but somehow none of them had spare bedrooms. When I pointed this out to my Aunt Linda during her second call of the day, she got all flustered. Well, we don't have the space. I don't have space either. That's why I rent it to people. You have more money. There it was, the real reason. Because I'd busted my back and built a successful business, I was obligated to solve everyone else's problems. By Wednesday, I'd had enough. I sat down that night and wrote the most comprehensive email of my life. Took me about 2 hours to get it exactly right. Subject line: setting the record straight. The full story. I started with the timeline: parents sell house for $450,000. Parents loan $350,000 to Ryan for condo down payment. Parents announce they are moving into my rental property without asking. I say no. And offer to help them find appropriate housing. They refuse and demand I evict my legal tenants. And I attach documentation, screenshots of text messages, photos of the lease agreement, even pulled up property records showing when I bought the house and how much I paid. The email was probably 1,800 words long. I went through everything point by point, but the best part was the end. Since everyone is so concerned about my parents' housing situation, I'm sure one of you will be happy to provide them with a place to stay. After all, family helps family, right? Please let me know your move-in date for mom and dad so I can give them your address. Hit send at 11 p.m. Wednesday night to 28 people. My phone was silent Thursday morning. First time in 3 days I wasn't woken up by angry relatives. Round noon, I started getting responses. They fell into 3 categories: people who suddenly remembered they didn't really have space after all, people who went radio silent completely, people who doubled down, and got even nastier. Uncle Pete was in category 3. Sent me this long reply about how I was destroying the family and turning my back on the people who made me who I am. Really dramatic stuff about dishonoring my ancestors and breaking the bonds of blood. I replied with one sentence: "What's your move-in date?" He never responded. By Friday, the phone calls had stopped. Either people realized they'd been fed a story, or they figured out I weren't backing down. But I wasn't done yet. I had one more call to make. Called Ryan directly Friday afternoon. He picked up on the first ring like he'd been waiting for it. "Marcus, what the hell did you send to everyone? The truth, you got a problem with that. You're making the whole family look bad." We went back and forth for about 10 minutes. He tried every angle. How mom and dad needed help. How I was being selfish. How family should stick together. Finally, I cut to the point. "You've got their money, Ryan. You figure out their housing." I hung up and waited to see what would happen next. The first sign something was wrong came from my cousin Maria. She's basically the only family member who stayed neutral during the whole mess. Probably because she's got her own drama to deal with. She texted me one Tuesday afternoon: "Hey, did you know Ryan is having problems with his condo purchase?" I hadn't heard anything, but it didn't surprise me. Financing an $800,000 place when you've never had a steady job tends to be complicated. "What kind of problems?" I texted back. "Bank is asking for employment verification and income statements." Apparently that's harder to provide than he thought. No kidding. Turns out banks actually want to see proof you can pay back massive loans. Revolutionary concept. Maria didn't have all the details, but over the next few weeks the story started coming together through the family grapevine. The bank had initially pre-approved Ryan based on my parents' down payment and some projections about his consulting business. But when it came time for final approval, they wanted actual documentation: pay stubs, tax returns, bank statements, all that boring paperwork that proves you're not just some deadbeat looking to live beyond your means. Problem is, Ryan doesn't have any of that stuff because he doesn't actually make any money. His consulting business was basically him calling himself an entrepreneur and occasionally meeting people for coffee to discuss opportunities. No clients, No contracts, no revenue, just a website he'd paid someone to build, and some business cards. The bank laughed him out of the office. Without the loan, he couldn't buy the condo, and that earnest money deposit, $50,000 of my parents' house money, was gone. But wait, it gets better. See, Ryan and Melissa had been planning this massive wedding. We're talking 180 guests. Fancy venue, open bar, the whole production. Because when you're living off your parents' retirement fund, why not go all out, right? The wedding venue wanted final payment 2 weeks before the ceremony. Ryan called my parents asking them to cover it since they'd already invested so much in his future. My parents had to explain that they'd loaned him almost everything and were currently living in a one-bedroom apartment they could barely afford. So Ryan started reaching out to family members for loans, and I put that in quotes because we all knew he wasn't planning to pay anyone back. Hey, I'm just short on the wedding venue payment. Could you help me out? It's just temporary until my business picks up. I got a text from him too, Marcus. I know we've had our differences, but I could really use your help with the venue payment. It's only $15,000. Only $15,000? Like that's pocket change. I didn't even reply. Apparently nobody else did either, because the venue ended up canceling their booking 4 days before the wedding. Just straight up told them the room wasn't available anymore because payment hadn't been received. They ended up having the ceremony at Melissa's parents' house. They had a nice backyard, but it wasn't exactly the luxury venue Melissa had been posting about on Instagram for months. Half the guests didn't show up because of the last-minute venue change. The other half spent the whole time whispering about what a disaster it was. According to Maria, Melissa cried through most of the reception about how this wasn't how she'd imagined her special day. Meanwhile, the same week as their backyard wedding disaster, I closed on a small retail space for my landscaping business expansion. I'd been looking at this place for months, needed some work, but had great potential for a garden center. I posted a casual photo on Instagram of the keys and paperwork, another project in the works. Sometimes patience pays off. Nothing dramatic, just a normal business update. A few family members liked the post. I noticed my parents didn't. But the story wasn't over yet. My parents were about to make one last desperate plays. Last Saturday morning, Sarah and I are having coffee in our kitchen, talking about baby names and looking at paint samples for the nursery. Nice peaceful morning. Exactly the kind of quiet family time I'd been looking forward to. Then our Ring doorbell starts going off. I look at my phone and see my parents standing on our front porch. Both of them dressed up nice. My mom holding a bouquet of flowers and what looks like a grocery bag. My dad's got this weird forced smile like he's trying to sell me something. They're talking directly to the camera like it's a video call. Marcus, we know you're home. My mom says in this overly sweet voice, we can see your truck in the driveway. I look at Sarah, she's already shaking her head. We brought groceries to cook for you. My dad chimes in, holding up the bag. Your mother wants to make that beef stew you used to love. The manipulation was incredible. They'd shown up uninvited to my house with props designed to make me feel guilty. Flowers and food like this was some normal family visit, instead of another attempt to bulldoze my boundaries. We've been thinking about everything that happened. My mom continues to the camera, we made mistakes. We should have asked your permission about the rental house. Too little, too late, about 6 months too late. I'm watching this whole performance on my phone while sitting 20 feet away from them. The audacity was breathtaking. After months of harassment, manipulation, and trying to destroy my business relationships, they thought they could just show up with flowers and reset everything. Sarah's looking at me like, please tell me you're not falling for this. I'm not answering the door. I told her, but my parents weren't giving up that easy. They stood there for about 15 minutes taking turns talking to the camera, explaining how sorry they were, and how much they miss me. My mom even started crying at one point, doing that whole victim routine she's perfected over the years. When it became obvious I wasn't coming to the door, my dad's tone changed. Marcus, this is ridiculous. We're your parents, open the door so we can talk like adults. That's when I made my decision. I called the police non-emergency line. I need to report trespassing. I have individuals on my property who refuse to leave, and I have a previous incident report involving the same people. The dispatcher was super professional about it, asked if I felt threatened, if they were trying to break in. Standard questions. I explained that they were my parents, but that I'd specifically asked them not to come to my house, and they'd already harassed my tenants at another property. We'll send an officer out. The response time was actually pretty quick. About 20 minutes later, a patrol car pulls up. I watch through the window as this officer gets out and walks up to my parents. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I could see my dad getting animated, pointing at the house, probably explaining how this was just a family misunderstanding. My mom was still holding those damn flowers like they were evidence of her good intentions. The cop listened patiently, then walked over to the Ring doorbell and pressed the button. "Sir, this is Officer Johnson with the police department. Could you come to the door, please?" I went outside and explained the situation: previous harassment of my tenants, repeated demands for my property, months of family pressure and manipulation. I showed him the incident report number from the rental house incident. Officer Johnson was completely reasonable about it. "Do you want them to leave your property?" "Yes." "Have you asked them to leave and not return?" Multiple times he walked back over to my parents and had another conversation. This time I could hear my dad getting louder. "This is our son's house. We have a right to visit our own child. Sir, your son has asked you to leave his property. You need to respect that. This is ridiculous. We're family. I understand this is a family situation, but property rights still apply. You need to leave now." My mom started crying again, but the cop wasn't having it. He was polite but firm. They needed to pack up their flowers and groceries and get off my property. And then they left. Officer Johnson came back to talk to me. He suggested I document everything and consider filing for a restraining order if they continue to show up uninvited. Sometimes people need official paperwork to understand that no means no. Monday morning I called my lawyer and explained the whole timeline. "You've got grounds for a restraining order," he said, "especially with the previous incident involving your tenants." We filed the paperwork that afternoon. I attached everything I'd been documenting over the past 6 months. The hearing was scheduled for the following week. I half expected my parents to fight it, but they didn't even show up. Judge granted the restraining order without any drama. 200 yards. They can't come within 200 yards of my house, my business, or my rental property. Violation means automatic arrest. I also changed my phone number that week, only gave the new number to people I actually trust. The peace and quiet has been incredible. No more manipulation calls, no more guilt trips, no more surprise visits. Just me, my pregnant wife, and our normal life. 2 weeks. That's how long the calm lasted before the next fire started. I am at the garden center when my phone rings, a no number, but it's local. So I pick up thinking it might be a potential client. "Hi. Is this Marcus? I'm calling about the investment opportunity your brother pitched me last month." I stopped what I was doing immediately. "I'm sorry, what investment opportunity?" "The property management portfolio. Ryan said you guys were partners in a real estate business, and you were looking for private investors." My blood goes cold. "Can you hold on just a second?" I step outside and find somewhere quiet. "Sir, I need you to tell me exactly what my brother told you." Turns out this guy, Kevin, had met Ryan at some networking event downtown. Ryan introduced himself as co-owner of a successful property management company and started showing Kevin photos on his phone of their portfolio. The photos were of my properties, my rental house, my personal residence, even the commercial building I'd just bought. Ryan had been walking around town claiming he owned half my business. He said you guys had 4 properties currently generating income and were looking to expand. Asked if I'd be interested in investing $25,000 for a stake in the next acquisition. $25,000? This wasn't some small-time scam. This was serious fraud. "Did you give him any money?" I asked. "I gave him $5,000 as a good faith deposit while I thought about the full investment. He said it would hold my spot in the deal." I felt sick. "Kevin, I need to tell you something. I don't have a business partner. I own those properties myself, and my brother has never invested a dime in anything I do." Long silence on the other end. "Are you saying he scammed me?" "That's exactly what I'm saying. And you're probably not the only one." I got Kevin's contact information and told him I'd call him back. Then I did something I probably should have done months ago. I Googled my brother's name along with my business name. The results made me want to punch a wall. There were business networking profiles where Ryan listed himself as co-founder of my company, a LinkedIn page claiming he was partner and investment coordinator for my real estate business, even a Facebook business page he'd created using my company name with himself listed as the primary contact. This piece of shit had been impersonating me for months. I started making calls, first to my lawyer, then back to Kevin to get more details about exactly what Ryan had told him and what documentation he might have. Kevin sent me screenshots of text conversations. Ryan had even sent Kevin a fake contract with letterhead that looked suspiciously similar to my actual business documents. But the worst part, he'd been using my reputation to legitimize his scams, telling people they could verify the success of the business by driving by the properties or looking up the ownership records. Because the properties were real, they were just mine, not his. My lawyer's advice was simple: document everything and call the police. This is identity theft and fraud, not family drama. That night I sat down with Sarah and showed her everything I had found. This is beyond family now, I told her. He's literally stealing my identity to con people out of money. Friday morning I called the police and filed a fraud report. Brought all the documentation, Kevin's screenshots, the fake business profiles, everything. The detective assigned to the case was actually pretty interested once he saw the scope of what Ryan had been doing. We see a lot of family financial disputes, Detective Martinez told me, but this goes way beyond that. Your brother's been running an active con using your identity and assets. They opened an investigation immediately, but I wasn't done yet. I had a better idea. I called Kevin back and proposed something. What if we set up a meeting with Ryan? Let him think you're ready to make the full investment, and I'll show up as a surprise. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop downtown. Kevin texted Ryan, saying he was ready to move forward with the $25,000 investment and wanted to finalize the paperwork. Ryan agreed immediately, probably because he was desperate for money. I showed up early and sat at a corner table where I could see everything but wouldn't be immediately visible to Ryan when he walked in. Ryan arrived right on time, carrying a folder that probably contained more fake documents. Kevin played it perfectly. So tell me more about how the partnership works with your brother. So Marcus handles the day-to-day property management, but I'm the one who handles investor relations and new acquisitions, Ryan said smoothly. We've got a great system worked out, and he's okay with bringing in outside investors. Are you kidding? It was his idea. He's always saying we need more capital to expand faster. I almost laughed out loud. This guy was doubling down on the lies even when he was about to get caught. Actually, Kevin said, I'd love to meet Marcus and hear his perspective directly. Ryan got a little nervous. He's pretty busy with the properties, but maybe we can arrange something down the road. How about right now? That's when I stood up and walked over to their table. The look on Ryan's face was priceless. Pure panic, like he'd just seen a ghost. His mouth actually fell open. Hey partner, I said, sitting down next to Kevin. Kevin here was just telling me about this investment opportunity you've been discussing. Ryan started stammering. Marcus, I can explain. Please do. I'm really curious to hear about our business partnership that I somehow forgot about. Kevin was recording the whole thing on his phone. We'd agreed beforehand that he'd document everything for the police report. I thought maybe we could. Ryan couldn't even form complete sentences. You thought you could steal my identity and defraud people using my properties as collateral? I said calmly. Is that what you thought? The coffee shop was pretty quiet, but our conversation was starting to draw attention from other customers. Ryan looked around nervously, probably realizing how bad this looked. Kevin, I continued, just so we're clear, I have never had a business partner. I built my company entirely by myself with zero help from my family. My brother here has never invested in real estate and doesn't own any portion of my business. Kevin nodded. So when he took my $5,000, he committed fraud. Ryan finally found his voice. Look, I was going to pay him back. I just needed some time to get things sorted out. Here's what's going to happen, I told him. You're going to give Kevin his money back immediately. You're going to take down all those fake business profiles. And you're going to pray that the police go easy on you when I file charges Monday morning. You wouldn't call the cops on your own brother. Wrong thing to say. Watch me, I replied, pulling out my phone. Actually, let's call them right now. Ryan panicked, started begging me not to involve the police, promising he'd make everything right, claiming it was all a misunderstanding, the same excuses he'd been using his whole life. But I was done enabling him. I called 911 right there in the coffee shop. I need to report a fraud in progress. The suspect is here with me now. 20 minutes later, two patrol officers showed up. I explained the situation and showed them the evidence. They arrested Ryan on the spot for fraud and identity theft. The last thing he said as they put him in the patrol car was, Mom and Dad are going to hear about this. Good, I told him. Maybe they'll finally understand what kind of person they've been enabling all these years. Kevin got his $5,000 back eventually. Turned out Ryan still had most of it in his checking account, but the criminal charges stuck. My brother ended up pleading guilty to avoid jail time, but he got 18 months probation and had to pay restitution to his other victims. Because Kevin wasn't the only one, the investigation uncovered at least 4 other people Ryan had scammed for smaller amounts. Total damage was almost $28,000. When my parents found out about the arrest, they went nuclear. Not at Ryan for being a criminal, at me for destroying the family. 4 months later, Ryan and Melissa got divorced. She moved back to her home state and took his name off all her social media. Last I heard, he was working customer service at a call center and living in a studio apartment across town. The crazy thing is how much better my life got once I cut off all the toxic family drama. My business is thriving. I just hired 2 full-time employees. Sarah's pregnancy is going smoothly, and we're expecting our son next month. Tom and Lisa renewed their lease for another 2 years and have become genuine friends. I even helped Tom start his own small business with some landscaping contacts. Sometimes you have to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your sanity. I chose sanity, and I've never been happier. Last week, I started a college fund for our son with $50,000. Unlike my parents, when he's ready to pursue his dreams, I'll actually be there to support him, not just with money, but with real guidance and encouragement. That's what real family does. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe to check out more stories on my channel.